Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Happy 4th of July. Sometimes the answer was, my sources say no. And if you didn't like that answer, you might ask the question a little differently and try again. Maybe this time you would get, it is certain. If any of that sounds familiar, perhaps like me, when you were a child, you played with a magic 8-ball. Remember the magic 8-ball? It was a black plastic ball that looked like a large 8-ball from a pool table set, but it was filled with liquid, and on the bottom was a clear lens. You would ask the 8-ball a question, and then shake it up, turn it upside down, and wait for an answer to appear in the window. If you were lucky, you got something like, without a doubt, or signs point to yes. But sometimes the answers were more negative. Don't count on it. Or, my sources say no. Or, outlook not so good. On occasion, you get an answer that would leave you wondering. Ask again later. Or, better not tell you now. Actually, a little research told me that there were 20 possible answers that could come up in a magic 8-ball, and 10 of them were positive, 5 were negative, and 5 were non-committal. And as crazy as it sounds, when we were children, we often took this seriously, as if the magic 8-ball could answer the deep questions of our lives like, will I get married? Will I do well on this math test? Will I get a puppy for Christmas? Somehow, we believed that God or some spirit would know what would happen and magically reach in and make the right answer come up. Now, that was a long way to go to introduce our topic for this week, but you see what the magic 8-ball was really all about was something called divination. Divination is the belief that you can gain insight into the future or the answer to a question using some magical means or ritual. Such things aren't confined to ancient times either. Today we have psychic readers, tarot cards, crystal balls, Ouija boards, and of course, magic 8-balls. And many people believe these superstitions. There are even instances of this in the Bible. And so that's what we're going to look at this week, with a few side trips to look at some related topics. First, let me say that there are clear prohibitions in the Bible forbidding witchcraft and attempts to communicate with the spirit world. Deuteronomy 18, for one example, says, no one shall be found among you who makes a son or a daughter pass through fire, or who practices divination, or is a soothsayer, or an augur, or a sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or who consults ghosts or spirits, or who seeks oracles from the dead. For whoever does these things is abhorrent to the Lord. That part about oracles from the dead is called necromancy, and we will look at an example of that later this week. So let's turn to one quick example of divination that you can find in the Bible, and let me set the stage. You might remember the story of how Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery in Egypt, how Joseph interpreted the dream of the Pharaoh about an upcoming famine, and how he was put in charge to store up food so the people would have enough when the famine came. Then you might remember how Joseph's brothers up in Canaan needed food too, and having heard that there was food in Egypt, they came to see if they could buy some. They never even considered that they might run into Joseph, presuming he was long dead or still a slave somewhere. But here they bowed before Joseph, not recognizing him, and Joseph tests his brothers with several different circumstances. But the one that was the most significant involved Joseph's full younger brother Benjamin. As the brothers were getting ready to head home with their grain, Joseph had his silver chalice hidden in Benjamin's sack, and then accused him of stealing it. Joseph's plan, you see, was to use this ruse to keep his brother Benjamin with him. Long story short, and there is much, much more to this story, when Joseph's servant finds the cup in Benjamin's sack, he says, "What have you done? My master was good to you, and you repay him by stealing the cup he drinks from? And this is the cup he uses for divination." You'll find this story in Genesis 43 and 44. Nevertheless, we can't ignore that Joseph was using the cup for divination. Officially, this practice is known as scrying, and it means to stare into a reflective object to try to see something that is normally hidden. Trying to tell the future, for example. People use crystal balls or other media for this, but Joseph would apparently look into his cup for this purpose. Now, I'm not really trying to excuse Joseph's actions, but we do need to take into account that he lived before the prohibitions against this kind of thing were written, and he had adopted many Egyptian ways. People in ancient times had a strong belief in the spirit world and depended on means like this to make sense of their world. As Christians, we are called not to do these things. We are called to trust in God. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.